Before I open the meeting this evening, can I ask members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback? And any remote participants, could you please keep your camera and microphone off unless you're wishing to speak? And ideally, do not use the camera facility at all, as this can affect the quality of the IT connection. The meeting may be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be returned in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swillborough Council or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as being in remote attendance. Could I ask you all to speak loudly and clearly into your microphones and to switch the microphone off after speaking, otherwise remote participants may be unable to hear the next speaker. Well, welcome everyone to this Policy and Resources Committee meeting, including any visiting members attending remotely and members of the public. We have a numerous plethora of staff in attendance this evening, and they will be recorded in the minutes, so I don't intend to go through that exhaustive list. We're not expecting any fire drill this evening. According to the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits and indicated and assemble outside where they're directed. And please remember, do not use the lift. And if anyone in attendance needs assistance in evacuating, could you please let me know now? Okay, I'll take the silence as a no. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Mike Whiten, who's substituted by Councillor Peter Marchington, Councillor Richard Palmer, Councillor Lloyd Bowen, and Councillor Mike Henderson, who's subbed by Councillor Ben Martin.
Thank you. Members, I request your approval of the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of November 2023, minute numbers 442 to 460, subject to the circulated amendment as a true and correct record. Thank you, members. Could I now ask if there are any declarations of interest from any members? Okay, thank you. So then we move swiftly on to item 5, which is a proposed bollard removal at James Street, Sheerness. Oh, sorry, Councillor Baldock.
Happy to propose a recommendation.
Thank you. No, we've got a second. Sorry. Yeah. Just to say you're paying attention. I thought you were signalling. Right. Okay. So those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Corporate Equality Scheme, item 6. Could I now ask our officer to introduce a report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The report this evening presents the draft Corporate Equality Scheme 2024 to 2028 for discussion and approval for it to go out to public consultation for 8 weeks. Local authorities are subject to the duties of the Equality Act 2010 and as such are expected to review and or replace their equality objectives every 4 years. The review has now taken place alongside the development of the corporate plan priorities for 2023 to 2027. As part of the review, we used the data from the 2021 census, which was gradually released last year. External workshops were held with individuals and organisations representing people with protected characteristics. After analysing the data from the census and the feedback from the workshops, we found that the 4 headline objectives were still relevant, but some of the actions needed updating. We also updated them in line with the draft corporate plan priorities and the peer review action plan. We also checked with lead officers to make sure the actions are still relevant and achievable, and will consult with officers more widely during the consultation period. The Policy and Resources Committee are invited this evening to comment on the draft Corporate Equality Scheme and to approve it to go out to an 8-week public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Members, any comments, observations? Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. I think this is great. It all looks good. I note that I believe in our current equality impact assessments, when we do them, as well as the 9 legally protected characteristics, we also consider poverty, but there's no mention of that in this document, and I wonder if that could perhaps be made more explicit, or if it even needs to be made more explicit. And I'm also interested in whether it would be possible for us to include rural deprivation and consideration of that as part of our equality impact assessments. It's obviously something that affects large parts of our borough, and you know, changes over the last couple of years, like a lot of the villages in between Sittingbourne and Faversham have lost their bus service, Tenham have lost their doctor's surgery, and I think that rural deprivation is becoming more and more stark, and I wonder if that's something that we could give consideration to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, certainly that we can add something into the equality scheme. I don't know if the member would prefer to wait and suggest that as part of the consultation, or whether he would want it included before we go out to consultation.
I'm happy to have it as part of the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lemon. Councillor Bonney, please.
Yeah, thanks. I know we have to follow national guidance and legislation, but this is an observation to someone who's married to what you might class as mixed race. And these boxes of whether you class someone white, black, white, Caribbean, and all these, actually all they do is pigeonhole people into groups. And actually, if you're treating people equally, you shouldn't be putting them in boxes, quite frankly. And the forms are, quite frankly, insulting to work out whether you are half white, half black, quarter. And as a parent of a mixed race child, I find it all quite offensive, really. So I don't know if there is a way we can address this or drop it, but actually, if you treat everyone equally, you don't need to do this.
Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. I actually agree with Councillor Bonney there. However, there's an awful lot of Polish people in my patch, and how do we know that we need to include Polish on our leaflets if we don't know? If there's only one in the whole of Sheerness, then no, but the numbers that we've got. So sometimes it is useful to know the demography of the area in order to best equalise everything. Because you could say, well, we put a leaflet out in English because that's where we are. Okay, you're discriminating against all these people that you know about because we were told about them from the census. If you know, Sheerness has got X thousand people who are Polish, you need to put it in Polish or Romanian or whatever. So sometimes it is useful, but I agree. I mean, depending on my mood, I generally prefer not to say on everything, just to move the balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonney, you come back.
Yeah, so on that specifically, black, white, Caribbean, that's not a language, that's a colour. And actually, that's where the definition of having a language, and even if you say Chinese, it's which dialect you want to pick, the mainstream one that you want to translate into. Indian, same. You know, I think if we are after these statistics for a specific reason, then we collect for that reason. Here, this is very generic stuff that actually, and even if you say on a health study basis, but we're not a health authority, I don't believe it helps us here particularly.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
And why do we assume there's no black Asian people? Yeah. Not even a category.
Okay. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a question because I haven't come across a document like this so far. I thought it was really well done, and it's really brought up some really interesting statistics that I'm going to be using through my ward work on quite a regular basis. So I wanted to highlight the good work. At the end of the document, there is a Swale Borough Council workforce equality and diversity key characteristics, and I wanted to know if that included councillors within that workforce area.
Okay, Councillor, sir, I'm going to ask Val to answer that one for us.
It would just include staff information, not members, because it's employees are employed by Swale.
Sorry, I do take that point, but when we're looking at other things like peer reviews, where it is highlighting that there are differences between members and the workforce, this is really the type of thing that, well, I think it's highlighted here for no reason, because it's almost like councillors don't exist in this document, and actually we do, and I think it's an easy win to actually think about the language that's used, the inclusivity here, and the fact that actually some of our councillors have got key characteristics. We make good input into the council's work. So I just wanted to highlight that, to me, that may be something that's missing from, unless, again, maybe I'm wrong, this isn't our workplace. I think it is our workplace, and I think we need to be represented in these sort of key documents if Swale's producing them.
Thank you. So you're right, it isn't our workplace, Councillor Worcester. But having said that, there's no reason why we couldn't include councillors, I'm sure, but I'll defer to the Chief Exec on that.
So we could do an Appendix 3 that sets out the equality and diversity characteristics of our councillors. We would have to ask the questions. So you'll see on the staff workforce, 19.6% of staff didn't wish to give details on their religion belief. Members might choose to have a different set of characteristics. Members might not choose to give their religion or, or they might choose to say something like that, Councillor, thank you. So I think there isn't anything to stop that, but we are, the workforce equality is around the services we give, and are we representative as officers of of our populations? There is a question about whether members are also, but as an officer body, we can do things to actively promote, whereas it is more difficult to actively try and get a broad, I know people do with all women shortlists and everything else, but that is in the political arena, and that would be something that each individual group might choose to do. It's quite difficult for us to have a policy that says we're going to aim for X kind of balance of different genders, different religious beliefs, sexual orientation, disability. So, but I think you're right. As a snapshot, it is a very positive thing, and we're happy to send something out. What I would ask is if we're able to send, if members agree to go to consultation, that we do that piece of work alongside it. So it's in the final document, but we're not consulting on whether people agree that this is the breakdown, because that is what it is. So if members agree, I think we're happy to do that alongside the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Okay. There are a few other issues, as we've... Well, I wasn't going to raise, but I will now. Male, female is completely binary. The figures add up to exactly 100%. Maybe that's accurate, but it would mean that there is no transgender or asexual people in the whole of Kent, according to this. What are we going to do about the underrepresentation of men in our council workforce? And there wasn't really a lot on the disability. There's nothing specifically about mental disability, or however you want to put it. And I'm wondering why we haven't gone into that a little bit more. It's just people who are classified as disabled and limited a lot, classified as disabled and limited a little, classified without a disability. And that's not really going to help us have an idea of where we should be focusing our efforts. I imagine that's probably because, from the census, but it's not overly satisfactory. But I imagine we just have to do this as we do it, because that's what the guidelines are.
Yes.
So on your what are we doing about more men in the workforce, we, on a quarterly basis, we have update reports on the workforce. We're not unusual in the local government sector. We the jobs that we have tend to attract more women applicants than male applicants. And that is, but we do actively try to get a better gender balance. And it's something that we'll continue to do. Always open to ideas from members as to how we can do that. It's quite difficult. Some of our jobs are in the lower paid sector of the community. So actually we have more part-time workers and they tend to be women, but absolutely. I think you're absolutely right on what we're not specific on how we deal with or what we want to do with different protected characteristics. This is an overarching scheme. What would be the next step if members would want to, and we would need to bring a paper here, would be to actually have a strategy on how we meet the public sector equality duty, which does go into more detail. But this is the statutory overarching, how we do the overarching things. So promoting a workplace environment where all staff are treated with dignity and respect. That's the overarching objective. The next step is the how. And so this is what we want to do. The next step is how. And if we go into that nth degree detail on this document, we won't have anything because it's going to take such a long time. And B, there needs to be something overarching so people can see our equalities duty at the beginning. But certainly happy to work with members on a more in-depth work on the public sector equality duty.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, please.
As we're going to go into some detail, I concur with Councillor Baldock on this bizarre binary nonsense of male and female. Working for an employer in Kent that states that they have 3% that are neither, it is bizarre to think that there are no 3% that are neither in Kent. That's bizarre. Certainly I welcome this. I think the timing of it's very good to coincide with LGBT History Month. So good time to get the consultation out there. My only query would be whether or not we are taking advantage as an organisation enough of the free training and on offer from certain sectors. So for example, the Made by Dyslexia people will offer free training to those who are involved in recruitment in organisations, and if your organisation does take up that training and then offers the ability for people to donate via their wage packet direct to Made by Dyslexia, that's all you have to do to become a dyslexic friendly employer. 20 seconds work and, quite frankly, 30 minutes of online training for those that do the recruitment. It's a nice, easy win, and no doubt that it's like that on many other aspects as well. So there are ways that we can improve, and that's the how, but obviously not for an overarching document. That's just things that we can find later. But very much welcome this and happy to move forward.
Okay, I'm just going to bring in Bal at this stage.
We're actually signed up to disability confident status, so we've actually at the committed stage, which recognises all disabilities, not just dyslexia. So we have gone through a process to get that status for the organisation.
Thank you. Clarissa.
I firmly believe that we have people in our borough who are non-binary and trans. However, our evidence base comes from on page 6, that's where we've got our evidence base, and that's the statistics. So it's one of the things where there's the statistics say one thing, but the lived experience that we have certainly within our service provision is we know that there are trans and non-binary people, and a number of our staff and our counsellors support trans rights and will do simple things such as having their pronouns on the bottom of their email. So it's not that we're not aware, it's just that on the evidence base that we've used, it isn't, we can't say it is when it's not captured.
Okay, thanks, members. So, could I have a proposal then to approve the draft corporate equality scheme to undertake a public consultation? Councillor Carnell, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Baldock. Thank you. Those in favour? That's unanimous, members. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is our pay policy statement. And I'll ask our officer to introduce the report, please.
So as part of the transparency legislation under the Localism Act, all local authorities are required to update their pay policy statement on an annual basis. This has to be agreed by a member committee and then by full council before we can actually publish it on the council's website. The report's not proposing any recommendations or decisions other than it being noted and agreed, and the format of the report hasn't changed compared to previous years. The key changes in the document are in section 3.6, which is page 45, and that relates to payments that we made to staff during the financial year. Section 4, Chief Exec earnings have been updated, and that's page 47. Trade union facility time is something we also have to report in the pay policy statement, and again those figures have been updated in page 48. And Appendix 1G, details of senior salaries have all been updated. These figures will be updated again at the end of March with the end of March payroll figures before we actually do publish it, but we do need to get it through a member committee and full council before we can publish the report.
Thank you, Bal. I've got Mike and then Angela.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendations that this be published and updated when ready.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Harrison, thank you. Those in favour?
So in seconding, because I did have my hand up to speak, I was just going to say, this is a statement of fact. I get it's got to go before a committee, but it just seems like somebody up there is just constantly looking for jobs for us, you know, councils run on a shoestring to give us extra work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Lisa.
Yeah, unfortunately, as this is one of the transparency, Councillor Harrison, sorry, this is one of the transparency agenda things, and we have to demonstrate for our own good governance that it has been seen by the decision makers.
We.
Who, baby Jesus?
Thank you. So we'll do that again, please. We've got the proposer and seconder. Those in favour? That's unanimous, members. Thank you very much indeed. Item 8 on the agenda, I've removed from the meeting this evening. It is covered further on in the budget paper anyway, so that's now been removed. Item 9, which is a draft enforcement strategy, and again, I thank our officer for an introduction to the report. Councillor Bonney, you weren't listening to me. I know I've got a miserable voice. We've just got to do a little bit of a housekeeping to move people around to get to a microphone.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. This is the Swale Borough Council Planning Enforcement Strategy. The Planning Acts give the Council, as local planning authority, powers in relation to planning enforcement. Excuse me. However, government policy and guidance in the National Planning Policy Framework and National Planning Policy Guidance makes it clear that those powers are discretionary and should only be exercised when it is expedient to do so. Any action taken should be commensurate with the seriousness of the breach of planning control and the harm caused or harm that may be caused. Government guidance is also clear that where development is acceptable on its planning merits, enforcement action should not be taken simply to remedy the absence of planning permission. It advises that planning permission may be granted retrospectively to regularised development already carried out. It should be noted that carrying out development without planning permission is not normally a criminal offence, but development undertaken without planning permission is at risk of enforcement action. The National Planning Policy Framework indicates that local planning authorities should consider publishing a local enforcement plan to manage enforcement proactively in a way that is appropriate to their area. This should set out how they will monitor the implementation of planning permissions, investigate alleged cases of unauthorised development and take action where it is appropriate to do so. The Council has produced this enforcement strategy to update and replace the 2021 enforcement strategy to take account of current best practice and to consider service provision. It has followed the guidance provided in the National Planning Policy Guidance, which provides considerable detail under the title of Ensuring Effective Enforcement and provides guidance on when enforcement action should be taken and outlines the various forms of action available. So the Swale Planning Enforcement Service comprises a planning enforcement team leader and 4 enforcement officers that sits within the planning section. This is not only in terms of investigation resources, but also in providing the planning and legal expertise in conjunction with Mid-Kent Legal Services needed to successfully pursue effective enforcement and to deal with subsequent appeals and prosecutions. The plan is arranged into sections and explains what constitutes a breach of planning control and the types of development investigated, with a list of what we don't investigate. It then goes on to explain our powers under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, our rights of entry without a warrant, the appeals procedure and prosecution and/or direct action. The last section deals with performance priorities and standards. The new strategy will provide consistency in our approach, and it will go some way to managing the public's expectations of the service. And I propose that members recommend the launch of a consultation period on the draft plan, being the 8-week period of the 26th of February to the 21st of April 2024. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thanks, Chair. I have no problem. I could propose the recommendation. I have no problem. Well, no, that's not strictly true. We are where we are in terms of planning enforcement. I think it is, the comms on this will be very important in managing, the officer did say it, managing public expectation. We've all had things in the past where, well, why aren't they being told to knock it down yet? You know, blah, blah, blah. And we see these things around the country where, you know, Big Brother's there saying, you've got to rebuild that brick by brick because you didn't have permission. We don't seem to do that down here. So managing expectation, and even when we take planning enforcement action, it doesn't necessarily mean that the public will be happy with the result. We actually, don't think we ever resolved it. And we took somebody to the High Court twice and won twice. Bloke still done what he wanted. So I'm unfortunately a bit pragmatic on this, but managing expectation has got to be the key on this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Yeah. Thank you. I think this is a very clear document and very, when we get it right, it absolutely needs to be able to be found on the website. and not hidden away under umpteen different clicks, because this is something we, as Councillor Harrison said, we have to get across to the public. We have to make it clear, bless you, when we can take action, what options we have. A couple of things I would mention. On the principles of planning enforcement, 1.2, Swale Borough Council adheres to the principles of good enforcement, which include, I think, a mention there to the source, the MPPF, again, just so that people don't think that's our thing, but we're actually doing that in line with the MPPF. I know it's mentioned in 1.1, but that's an introduction. People, principles of planning enforcement, straight to it. Don't read the first bit. So I just think a source there so that we can specifically say, no, what we're doing here is following national guidance vis-à-vis guidance that is nationally expected. The other thing on page 7 of the little document, 89 of the large document, heaven knows what it is online or PDF. The last line, decisions to take enforcement action under the current scheme of delegation or not to take further action will be relayed to local ward members, planning committee chair and vice chair. There is a constitutional party working group. Not right, is it? Constitutional working group. Yeah, what's the P stand for? Oh yeah, we're just a CWG. Correct. Communist Workers Group. We are just, we're recommending to council that actually the constitution requires it's done in consultation with local ward members, planning committee chair and vice chair. So, yeah, this is consultation. Maybe that'll come back, but it just seems odd to be consulting if we might be changing it. On the 4, enforcement powers and processes. When we look at, this is what they go to. Oh, what can they do? What are they going to do about my complaint? What we don't have, which might be useful, is the options that are available to a officer, when they're out there, such as, because people are, oh yeah, then they'll just put in a retrospective planning application. Well, I think we ought to put in here, that is actually acceptable policy, but that, if they put in an application, it's unreasonable to kick them off unless it's really major. So I just think maybe a couple of bullet points about what options are available to an officer, which may not always match the hopes and expectations of the claimant, but it's reality. Apart from that, I think this is really good.
Thank you. Paul, is that something we could include?
Certainly, yes. We'll consider that amendment and we'll have it ready for the consultation period if you agree to that. Thank you.
Yeah, members, I think we all agree to that. Yeah, yes. Thank you, Paul. Councillor Speed, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Under performance standards, reference is made to a target of responding to at least 95% of all reports within a 5-day deadline. How are we performing in meeting that target, and could that figure be included in the report? Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, could you come back for us, please?
Yeah, so basically when we receive a report, an acknowledgement letter is sent out, depending on the type of report, whether it needs urgent attention, but the vast majority are dealt with within 5 working days. And at the moment, I believe we're on about sort of 89% of that target, and that is one of our performance standards. So we will certainly look into that and make any amendments necessary for this report for the draft strategy.
Okay, thank you. Members, I don't see anybody else indicating, so could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Baldock. Seconder? Councillor Bonney. Those in favour? That's unanimous again, members. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 10, which is a discretionary rate relief policy, and I think we've got Zoe online.
I am here.
Yep.
Apologies for not being in person tonight.
No apology required.
Discretionary rate relief is awarded to charities and non-profit making organisations following the Council's discretionary rate relief policy. Charities receive 80% mandatory relief, which we can top up by 20%. For other non-profit making organisations, we are able to award 100%. In the past, the Council have been able to backdate this relief following the government legislation. From 1st of April 2024, the legislation changes so the Council is able to decide the maximum period for the backdating of awards. The award of discretionary rate relief is not at a cost to the borough. It reduces the amount of rates we collect. The preferred option would be to backdate for a maximum period of 12 months. The reason for this is it awards the same amount of backdating for all businesses, making it fair for all local voluntary sector providers. We are also making a recommendation to review the discretionary rate relief scheme during the next financial year. We are required to give 12 months' notice to change the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, happy to move this. Just 2.1, bullet point 1. This sentence does my head in. I'm trying to work out what it means. Registered charities and community and amateur sports clubs are entitled to mandatory relief of 80%. The Council has the discretion to award a further discretionary relief up to 20%. Well, 20% is lower than 80%. Should that be 100%?
No, to take it up. It takes it up to 100.
So the further discretionary relief would be up to 100, as in the third bullet point.
No, so the mandatory of the 100%, 80% is mandatory, and then we have the discretion on the remaining 20 to make it up to 100% relief available, but we don't have to give them the 20 because that's our discretion.
Well, can we just have of instead of up to?
Yep. No, because we might not award full 20%. Yeah. Deal.
20%.
I think we've explained it sufficiently. Okay, I don't see anybody else indicating. So.
Of up to.
Councillor Harrison.
On the review, Zoe, I can recall sitting, I don't think it was in this room actually, going through the list of organisations, we'll call it, who got relief and what percentage they got, and it's one of these areas where local members' local knowledge, which I know is not the flavour of the month, but members' local knowledge actually did input quite a bit of detail in reviews in the past, and I'm wondering whether that's something you feel might be beneficial. I hesitate to say, bloody working group. I just sort of put that in the ether. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. That would be helpful. We met in the committee room. I can remember the meeting. Yes, I think advice locally from members is really useful, and I think you might like to look at the types of businesses we award to. There's some discretionary relief goes to offices now, and you may feel that sort of award to registered social landlords, for example, or for larger charities that you may not want to award to, but it's obviously at the discretion of members, and we will go out and consult with local charities and businesses, and they can give their input.
Thank you, Zoe. And I'll take that as a deliberate attempt to antagonise me, Councillor Harrison, by suggesting another working group.
Well, I won't be on it, I can tell you now. I could probably do it all on my own. is there any appetite? I'm very conscious that there were so many things that members used to be involved in. Okay, it's before the cabinet system, and members got out of the habit of being involved in anything. But, you know, as part of this new open democratic malarkey, you know, there might be some members who think, yeah, that would be a good idea because, you know, I want to know the sort of things we have in the past, Zoe will correct me if I'm wrong, said, well, if we're giving it to that, what about that shop that's at number, I'm making this up, 23 High Street, so I don't know what is 23 High Street, is doing exactly the same thing, should they be? And that way you actually got, well, yeah, we can contact them. So that local knowledge could actually be beneficial to our communities. That's all I'm saying. But if there's no appetite for a working group, then I'm not going to propose it. Thanks.
Councillor Baldock.
Well, as Zoe said, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so we've got a proposal on the floor from Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Baldock, who'll be sitting on the working party. Just 1 second, I've just got to bring Lisa in.
No, that doesn't affect this decision, though. That is for the review of the overall policies, and that's not on this element.
Yes.
Just to clarify, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll agree that bit first, then we'll come on to the working group. So, could I have a proposer for the officer recommendation? Councillor Carnell, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Harrison, thank you. Those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. And so the proposal for a working group or working party, however you want to call it, those in favour of that? Five, 6, 7.
It's about talking about local stuff.
Count, yeah. 7 there at the back, 7. Sorry.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Against,
I know. I'm starting to wake now.
Those against? Abstentions?
Like they were in that one.
So it's carried. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whoever wants to be, really.
Yeah. Okay, it's something we can sort out outside, isn't it? Okay, we now move on to item 11, which is the Treasury Management Strategy.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the annual report outlining the proposed Treasury Management Strategy for the next financial year. It was also presented at the last Audit Committee 2 weeks ago. Strategy is reviewed and agreed each year, setting out how the Council will manage its cash flow, borrowing and investments and the associated risks. The Council needs to ensure that surplus cash balances are invested in a secure way, putting security and liquidity of the money above any financial return that can be obtained. There are no proposed changes to the Treasury Management Strategy compared to last year. We do expect to see a change in the Treasury position over the next 12 months with an increase in borrowing for capital projects and a reduction in the cash balances held. This is managed day by day to ensure that we have sufficient cash for our purposes, but without taking on borrowing until it's required. The strategy sets out the indicators that we will abide by over the year ahead, set out in Appendix 1 of the report. Happy to take any questions.
Doesn't look like there are any. Don't see anybody indicating. Okay, so Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for the right initials because I do get these things wrong. I'm very quickly repeating what I said at the Audit Committee. We as a council were not sure when we first invested in the CCLA, but I'm very pleased that we did because it has come on leaps and bounds and we were right to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, was that a proposal?
Well, it was actually, I was seconding what I thought Councillor Harrison was going to propose, so I'll propose it.
Okay, could I have a seconder? Councillor Lehman, thank you. Are those in favour? That's unanimous, members. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 12, which is the 2024-25 budget and medium-term financial plan and capital strategy. I thank the officer to give us a...
Thank you. So this report details the administration's proposed budget for 24-25. The papers were published before the final settlement was announced on Monday, the 5th of February, when further one-off grant funding was awarded for 24-25 of about £179,000. Government have awarded the extra funding to help councils balance their budget, and so I recommend that that funding is used to offset the budget gap that is reported in this report and to bring down the use of reserves to balance the budget. This report does not also include the decision that KCC are contemplating over the withdrawal of our £300,000 waste enabling payment, and so if that is approved, the gap will increase to the figures that are published in this document. Paragraph 2.3 shows the table before the additional grant funding was awarded on Monday, and so these figures have changed. The services grant went up by 3,000, so we got to a £144,000 reduction, and the funding guarantee grant went up by £176,000, which made that additional funding of £779,000 from the original assumptions. So as I said, that changes the budget gap to either £370,000 if we use that funding to support the budget gap, or potentially £670,000 depending on the KCC decision. Paragraph 3.4 shows the changes excluding the most recent grant funding change, and the figures that change from that were published in November with the draft budget. This report is predominantly unchanged apart from those areas to the papers that were published at the Policy and Resources Committee in November. So the most significant change since then is the review of the business rate growth to support the base budget. Previously, our growth above the budget assumptions was allocated to the business rates volatility and budget contingency reserves. However, given the continued level of improvement in our growth position, it is proposed that we now use £1 million of this additional growth to support the base budget. There is a risk associated with this given the uncertainty of the business rate reset position, which is why it has not been built into the budget before. But at the moment, I believe that this is an acceptable risk given the delay that keeps happening with the business rate reset and the size of our budget gap. It makes sense to use it at this stage. Our council tax base has also grown slightly with the calculation that is delegated to us to do the council tax base. So we've an additional £40,000 from that position. The changes to council tax discounts and premiums were approved in principle for the budget of the current financial year in February 23. So this report now just confirms the implementation of the empty homes proposal from April 25, an advance notice of the second homes, which we're not able to introduce until April 24, the other one, April 25 for the second homes, as the legislation and some other data capture information is required before we can introduce that one. Fees and charges are details as in Appendix 10. Capital programme, it has been slightly updated from that published in November to include upgrade to the financial management system, which has got a reserve funding associated with it, so there's no impact on the overall revenue budget, but it's just an update of the capital position. The reserves reporting has improved due to the use of some of the business rate growth. So the take on reserves is smaller than originally anticipated, so that pushes our reserve balances out for a further year, but you will not be surprised to hear me say the use of our reserves for budget gaps for the future years is not sustainable, and so we really do need to work to continue to identify the savings position for future years. This document also includes our MRP statement, which again is predominantly unchanged from last year. We have just added in an additional option of choice of how we account for MRP should we decide to do it on an annuity basis, where we have previously always done it on a useful life basis. That opportunity, the annuity basis gives a bit more flexibility if the situation arises that would be more beneficial to the council. We also have detailed the parish precepts that have been informed by parishes. Obviously, that's not anything that is our decision. That is just purely letting you know what parishes have told us they would like to collect on their behalf. the risk assessment on the budget position, and a whole 12 responses on the budget consultation process. So all responses have been detailed for your information. Have I missed anything? I don't think so. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Baldock, please.
Firstly, are we sure about the figure for bobbing? That they've put their council tax up by 173%? Because being a member of Bobbing Parish Council, we didn't think we'd done that. Well, I'm only declare an interest if we're all going to declare an interest on every parish council that we're members of, and then not have enough to get through the vote.
What page is that, Councillor Baldock?
It's page 193, but you can get back to me on that, but I am a bit concerned about it.
Hartlips,
I know, Hartlip's high as well. I'm not on Hartlip. Yeah, do you want us to declare interest of every parish council we're on? Yeah. Okay, I declare an interest on Baldon and Bobbing.
I declare an interest in Rodmersham Parish Council.
Councillor Worcester.
I declare an interest in Minster Parish Council and Sheerness Town Council, even though it's all written down.
Councillor Martin.
I'll declare an interest as a member of Faversham Town Council.
And Councillor Speed.
I declare an interest in Linstead with Kingstown Parish Council.
Is there anybody else who'd like to declare an interest in any parish council?
I'd like to declare that I'm a council-appointed member of Tunstall Parish Council.
Thank you, Larissa.
We'll double check all of the figures. They have obviously been double checked, but if you asked that, if that's not what you're expecting, we will have a look and amend before the final report at full council.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
Further to that then, our amendments, is this subject to amendment before it goes to full council, given there are some outstanding issues to be resolved?
This is the budget that's being presented to full council with the caveats, which are things that we are not able to say, which is the thing about the money for KCC, but also the new grant. We will say that on the day. It can't be amended because any amendments would have to happen now. So but what can happen on the day is either there can be cross-party amendments or there can be individual amendments to the budget which can go forward. However, just the usual rules do apply with amendments, and they have to have been agreed with someone from finance, only agreed in terms of that they're financially sustainable and that they don't stop the budget being balanced.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
Well, given the fact that we need a budget for the local plan this year, and that isn't included within this, and it may be a considerable sum, I would have trouble at the moment because supporting this, because we need to ensure that we have budgeted for the work for the local plan to be carried out. And I think that is absolutely fundamental to this year's budget.
So one of two things can happen. If you if members know what sort of money they're looking to have, then an amendment can be put to the budget on the night. If it's something that is an unknown, because you don't know what it is yet, then in the usual way of any additional spend throughout the year, a report can come to Policy and Resources requesting money for that very purpose. But we can't have the budget that's being recommended is the budget that's being recommended, and any changes would need to happen on tonight, but that's not to say that they couldn't be, if there's something that all members agree with, it can either come as an amendment from one party or amendment cross-party, and that's fine.
Well, I think it's absolutely fundamental that we are certain that there is budgetary provision. Leaving it to trying to find money for it after the budget has been agreed would be difficult. It would be, there's going to be a whole ramifications. We wouldn't have the information up front enough for the officers to allocate that money, to be able to spend that money. So, we'd be talking about a P&R in March. We'd be talking about that, if it's agreed then, won't be able to start until late March. This is a really fundamental piece of work for this council, and it should have been budgeted for. We thought it had been. We need to do something about this, Chair.
Lisa.
So spend can start with using the local plan reserve that is already in place. The conversations that we had earlier this week, we were led to believe that that wasn't going to be sufficient to support this any additional spend. So it won't hold up the process if the decision is not taken immediately. But I think if you want to make an amendment to the budget that is discussed at full council, then it can be done at that stage with the understanding of where that funding is going to be coming from. If it comes back later, then it will still be the same discussion, but that will not hold anything up of progressing with the local plan because there is enough budget to start the process.
Okay, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what I was going to say. I think I was going to say something like, I need a report, give me the detail. At whatever point in time it comes up, thanks. I know that I look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves, but £500,000 is a bit, I need a bit of paper, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Bonney.
Yeah, thanks. And I echo Councillor Baldock's sentiment here, because we do need to get on with this. It's a bit difficult because I don't think we've got visibility into how those costs would pan out over the year against what we have as a budget in there for local plan work as to what the difference is and the variance. I suspect it might need to be dealt with afterwards during the year as the work progresses and we've got a better idea of spend profile.
Yeah, not being an expert, I would tend to agree, Councillor Bonney, but Lisa, did you want to?
I would suggest that there's probably an element of unity across the room. I don't know, I'd like to hear from the other side on the local plan and moving forward with it.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I'd like to explore the possibility that this committee proposes an amount that we earmark for local plan reserves, extra local plan reserves this year. If we don't need to spend it all, then it can be reallocated within the year. If we need more, then we can come back and go through that process. But I think we need to have the confidence that when we vote this budget through, we have voted through an adequate amount to deal with the local plan. As I say, if it's too high and we don't spend it all, great, we can reallocate or put it back into reserves. But this is so fundamental that I cannot at the moment agree where we are, because leaving it later is too worrying for me.
I don't know that I've understood correctly, so forgive me if I haven't. are you saying we can't put money in this year without a paper because this report isn't about this year's budget, it's about next year's budget? So without a paper suggesting setting it out, what can happen now, an amendment can go in now with the chair's agreement. However, there would be a risk to that because it hasn't had any of the finance detail. My advice would be that if members wish to have an amendment, that it is put in on Budget Council night. That won't affect the ability to do the work. As the 151 officer has said, we've got money in the budget to start that work straight away. Putting it in as an amendment will either have the support of council or it won't. That is the thing of the amendment. We can work with you or any other member, as we are doing on amendments, to say how that can be, to help you identify how you would fund it, as we would with any other. But I think the only two options you have at this stage is to A, put it in as an amendment, or B, and A and B could happen, put it in as amendment, and if that fails, then bring a report back to the following committee. But I would suggest that if you wish to have money, put it in as an amendment and identify, working with the officers, how much that amendment would be for. And that would be my suggestion. This committee can't agree to put money in to this year's budget because we don't have any report setting out why we want to do it, and members won't have had the opportunity to consider it and scrutinise it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
I agree that it is important that we need to know where some money is going to be for the local plan. It's going to be something that's going to be moving forward. But it has been there for the last few years and it hasn't been moving forward. So there is money there. And I think that is what the local plan reserve is. It's money that's still sitting there. So it's not that there isn't any money there for it. It's just that it's not in there in the budget because there's some other sitting there. So it is important to get that known, how much it's going to be, not just now, but the following years as well, because it's going to be something that's going to keep going forward and we need to make sure there's enough money there. But it is a concern that what we've got, recommendation number 1, is to approve the administration's budget proposals. These are the administration's proposals coming to us tonight to agree to take them forward, and it's almost like there's a bit in here that we're not happy with. We shouldn't have got to this point if you're not happy with it. It's your budget. I'm happy to agree this tonight to move it forward. There is obviously amendments that are going to be made. If there's other amendments like that and you need cross-party support, then come and speak to other parties and try and get this through and get it sorted before you get to that point. But something to be looked at, and I'm happy to take all this forward, get it through to the next thing. I don't agree with some of the stuff that's in there, but to move it to the next step, get the amendments and get it to full council.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe that we're looking towards getting a decision on a balanced budget next meeting, and therefore anything else to be spent must already be known before you can actually vote that in. Is that true? I believe so. No.
No, on the night we can discuss amendments that have been that have been cleared through the financial process before then and are received before the Monday of the council week. So anything that is debated on the night must balance it in its own right, but it doesn't already have to be in the papers.
Thank you. Councillor Speed, please.
The local plan reserve that's in place, which means that work is not going to be held up, exactly how much money is available that we can use without making any changes to the budget?
The reserves table is included in your papers at page 197. And if the local plan reserve is big enough, it will have, yes, the local plan reserve had an opening balance in the current year of £212,000, with an assumption that we would be using funding in the current year to support the local plan work. So depending on how much of that is spent during the year will depend on the balance at the end of the year, but at the moment it's forecast to be £183,000 plus what is already in the base budget for planning services for the work that's done on the local plan. So that we have that security, if you like, already. It's going to be anything that we need to identify over and above that will need to come separately.
Thank you. That doesn't seem very much security to me, given the expense of the local plan. So I do agree this needs to be budgeted properly.
Councillor Bonney, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just to pick up on a point made earlier about this being our budget, I think the difficulty arises is that this was brought to us back in whenever it was November, and the government since made an announcement about housing targets. Was it the day Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve? And as budget processes run not in parallel with government announcements, this is the quandary, is how to ensure that what we wish to do, and I think there is a united possible view on how we deal with that, and our budgets, and I agree, we need to make sure it's adequately reflected, as you've just thrashed out there, and as we know, that possibly doesn't cover the whole cost, and that is our concern.
Okay, so the message I would hear is that if there is enough support from all councillors on the night, then the amendment will go through anyway. So, coming back to the very beginning, could I have a proposer for sorry, Councillor Lehman, and I'll continue.
I was waiting for that debate to end to ask a completely mundane, well, not that mundane question, but is everything now finalised with regard to internal drainage board funding, or is there still an open question mark there?
No, unfortunately. So the headline figures have been announced that there's a £3 million budget, as there was last year, to support councils with drainage board levy liabilities. We don't know the details. So, yeah.
Would be nice.
Yeah. Hopefully by full council we'll have that. We had £40,000 allocated in the current year out of the 3 million that was allocated last year, but they are apparently waiting to see what drainage board levies are levied to councils before they allocate the funding, so we're not even guaranteed whether we're going to get any. So we're funded in our budget. We have assumed that no funding. So anything we get, we'll improve that. Yeah.
Thank you. And if it helps, I was up there at the big house last night, going through it all with them. So, and there does seem to be a real appetite to move away from the current model of, taxpayers picking up the bill, and just because quite clearly, when you get Liz Truss standing up there, East Norfolk, and she's likely to drown before many others do, I think, and they're about to go bang, because they just haven't got the funding. So, we've said it, we've lobbied, we've been there, and we're on the special interest group, Rich, so we're doing what we possibly can. I've got Councillor Whistler, Councillor Harrison, and then Councillor Speed.
Can I just check that I can ask questions on a totally different aspect of the paperwork? Is that okay? Brilliant. I'd like to ask a question based upon the consultation that was run, the budget consultation survey. Would that be okay? I'm a bit in favour of consultations. It's probably not a popular viewpoint, but there you go. What I'm not in favour of is consultations that we apparently pay for that generate 12 responses. I've got to ask from a viability element, is this actually serving its purpose? Is this value for money to take on something like this? Or is this a box ticking exercise that really should be looked at and referred? Because I've taken part as a councillor on maybe 4 different occasions now where I will go into the community, make space in my schedule and physically to go out and do consultations with people who can't get access to online or whatever. And I would find it really difficult on something as important as the budget to accept consultation results that are just 12 people out of, I think it's 110,000 possibly. And what sort of space does that hold in our decision making with such a really poor reflection of what our population is? And I don't know what I'm supposed to do with these results in considering, because at such low numbers, how can you possibly consider that as an active reflection of the population? And if not, what can we do to improve this situation for the next time any consultation goes out for sale? Because that just looks like a waste of money in this time when we're trying to save money, if that makes sense.
So the only cost for the consultation, Councillor Worcester, is officer time. So we haven't, there's no external costs to this exercise. Any help that you can get in engagement and consultation will be greatly received by us, but we can only work with the responses that we've got.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
Yes, I'm quite happy to move recommendations 1 to 10. And whilst I'm on my feet here, when we first, it was legislation, I believe, and we had to go to consultation with the public, 30 grand. These reports are always 30 grand, aren't they? Anyway, we had a really good consultation exercise, paid this consultant, it came from up north, one-man band, but he was very good. I've probably got it indoors. Anyway, you know when you're filling these questions in and they ask you the same question 15 different ways to try and get the right answer. Anyway, so he came back and he reported to either full council or policy and resources, and it was things like, I mean, he gave us the basic answer. He didn't give us the how we got to the 15 questions to get here. We think there should be a big museum in Sheerness, because Sheerness is it's a big area and we should have a museum in Sheerness. But we wouldn't go there, but we just think that there should be one. Now, they didn't realise, as I say, the 15 different questions asked in the same thing, didn't actually realise what it was they were saying, but that was the upshot of it. But say for it was a very good exercise in terms of finding out how our residents think. But in terms of informing the budget, it was not that useful, because people do, well, why haven't we got a swimming pool with a I'm not sure of the height, 15-metre jump thingy. Well, that's it, yeah. Well, we're a big town, we should have one. Well, no, I wouldn't go there, but I think we should have one. And it's things like that. Why haven't we got this? Why haven't we got that? Why haven't we got the other? The reason we ain't got a big picture house, love, is because the 3 we had shut down because you didn't go there. But we should have a big picture house. And it's things like that. So how you get people to respond to consultations, apart from paying 30k to get it, I do not know. I don't think, with the money the KCC spend on their super duper thingy online, which I always get asked to do, I don't think their response is that good. And sometimes 12 isn't, but you don't need a high response for it to be statistically significant. There is that fact, which people don't always understand. But maybe in the next civic year, we could look at this issue of consultation, and is there a way of getting a better response apart from going out with the staff and delivering paper surveys, because Councillor Harrison said, you want a response, you drop it through the door. And we had the best response we have ever had to a consultation, because we put those paper questionnaires through their doors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank those 14 people that responded. No, 14 in Councillor Harrison's case when she dropped through the door and got that massive uplift. Councillor Speed, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Going back to the prospect of there being an amendment put forward to full council for the local plan to be properly budgeted, we do need a recommendation from officers as to what that figure should be based on past experience. I know it's a bit of an open-ended checkbook, but based on past experience, we ought to be able to calculate that. Because at the moment, the figure that's budgeted is £30,000, which is clearly inadequate.
Thank you.
So, sorry, I think my point might have misunderstood. The £30,000 was what we thought we would spend this year from the reserve. So the amount that is in the reserve is £212,000. So that is the amount of money that is available to spend on the local plan.
Yeah,
At the moment.
the estimated use for 24-25.
Whenever we like. It's anything that we need, that we identify that is over and above that we need to identify additional funding for. And then we will work with to get that estimates of how much it's going to be. But it's anything over and above the 212 is what we need to find a balancing figure for.
Yeah, but we need that figure in advance of the council meeting.
Yes, well, amendments are published on the Monday before full council, so anything that we get from any amendment will need to be published by then anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Yeah, I am have asked for details of what is they expect they would need to do it. So as soon as we get that, we'll have an idea of what the gap is.
Thank you. So, members, we'll take them all en block if we can, 1 to 10. Could you have a proposer? Oh, you did, yes. Sorry. Councillor Harrison, could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Bonney. Those in favour? That's unanimous, members. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 13. And oh, it's in place already. No, she said she was short.
I was just wondering whether, after that, all that hectic, whether we need to have an adjournment. I'm just conscious of the number on the agenda. Well, no, actually, I'm just feeling I'm not a hot person. I'm burning up.
Right, on that basis, Councillor Harrison, on that basis, we'll take a 10-minute adjournment. Yeah, 2 minutes, yeah. The clock's ticking. Right, members, can we get back together, please? Right, we move on to item 13, which is where we broke at, which is a Sheerness Marine Town Conservation Area Review. And I'll thank our officer to, this time, introduce it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Is it okay if I go through Sheerness Marine Town and Mile Town together and then take the questions, or would you rather?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So Sheerness Marine Town and Mile Town Conservation Area appraisals were consulted on together. A 6-week public consultation ran from Thursday, 10th of August 2023 up to and including Thursday, 21st of September 2023. Due to poor response to the consultation, it was further extended for 10 days and finally concluded on Friday, 6th of October 2023. Sheerness Marine Town, we've received a total of 5 consultation responses. 4 were from local residents and 1 from Napier Terrace Residents Association. For the Mile Town, we received a total of 3 consultation responses, 2 from local residents and a very detailed response from Historic England. Sheerness Marine Town Conservation Area was first designated in June 1976. It has not been systematically reviewed since its original designation, and until now there has been no character appraisal or published management strategy. It is on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register. It is proposed to extend the conservation area west to include the 3 listed buildings in the vicinity. It's on page 305 of the documents, that the meeting pack. Conservation area west to include the 3 listed buildings in the vicinity of the current conservation area identified as boundary extension A, and to include the entire section of Alma Street west of its junction with Richmond Street within the conservation area identified as boundary extension B. Sheerness Mile Town Conservation Area was first designated in June 1976. An appraisal document and minor boundary changes were adopted in 2000. It has not been systematically reviewed since 2000, and until now there has been no published management strategy. This one also is on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register. And regarding the boundary extension, the map is on page 380 of the meeting pack. 2 specific areas are identified in the document as boundary A to include Old Jews burial ground up to and including Invicta Works along Hope Street, and boundary B to include the entire curtilage of the waterworks. This is basically because the current conservation area boundary cuts through the site of the waterworks. In addition to these 2 extensions, Historic England has recommended that consideration be given to extending the boundary to include the former county library, which is right next to the waterworks, and also to extend the conservation area up till the junction of High Street with A250 to include that stretch of High Street. Although that High Street has been altered quite a lot, but the management strategy that we are proposing to adopt for the conservation area might benefit that part of the High Street as well in the process. And this map is on page 380 of the document, the meeting document. Any questions on Sheerness?
Thank you, Jamil. As always, very, very comprehensive. Members, I've got Councillor Baldock and Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, congratulations to the officer on this. I think another really good report, really good extensions of the conservation area. It is a shame that it's taken so long, because now that we've done this review, we can actually take some positive action to really support the Sheerness conservation areas. And now that we've got a management plan as well, these are the sort of things that can be used to really help support and protect an area. So I'm really pleased that we're able to continue with these conservation area reviews. And it is disappointing so few people responded, but we need to go out and tell, this is good news and let's share it.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. I'd say that people in the proposed extended area probably haven't got a clue what this is all about, even if they know it's about. And the majority of properties in the extended area are private rents. So it's the landlords that really should have been contacted to have a say, because it is the landlords that will be coughing up the extra money if any changes are needed, because in a conservation area you have to do things by the book. The second point I would raise is on the waterworks, which there's been many discussions over many years about. There was a category put on the waterworks which was applied to be removed, and it was removed so that works could be done to bring it back into use. And there were a number of planning applications over the years to bring it back in use. At one point it was going to be a harvester. Unless there is a historic group, like the historic group who worked on the Dockyard Church, and indeed Naval Terrace and Regency Terrace, who are prepared to take it on and apply to various bodies to try and bring that up to some sort of normality, it is just going to continue to get more and more derelict, possibly more and more fires. And it will again be, well, what's the local council going to do about it? Well, we ain't got a few million spare. Now, that could well, had it not changed hands, 15 times in 15 years, what we should have had was permission to demolish. And then that would have cleaned up that whole area. Looking at the old library, I'm not sure that that has got any conservation benefit at all, apart from I went there every single week. But looking at it, it's not, I can't see that there's any historic benefit to it. And I thought that was the purpose of having conservation areas, not just to make more areas more expensive for people to improve. So I merely make those comments, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second some of Councillor Harrison's comments regarding how brilliant the report is. I would just like to ask a question about the implications for what we may not see as potential worthiness of conservation, but obviously this area just misses out, for instance, those structures that are on the sea defences along the Beachfield area, if that makes sense. So I would really appreciate, not tonight, but maybe I could have some input as to, for instance, how this sort of report affects those sort of structures, because they may be, for instance, not hundreds of years old, but they do provide the character and the culture as part of a historic seaside town area. And for instance, if those structures were moved into perhaps Whitstable or Canterbury or that sort of area, they may be looked at with a slightly different view as to what they're looked at in Swale, if that makes sense. So if that's okay, could I ask for that sort of communication to go on after the meeting? Is that all right? Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you. I think both these conservation areas are really valuable in preserving the area and the character of the area. Might slightly disagree with the other councillor about the water tower. Yeah, you are heathen. I think it's fair to say that there has been consternation at the state that has been allowed to go into. So part of this, and I have had a discussion with officers about this, is how we use enforcement going forward and we actively manage these conservation areas, which is the follow-on piece of work that needs to be done. So you can't just do this and expect it to happen. We have to twist arms, possibly do things that landlords may not find palatable, but that unfortunately is, if you purchase an asset in this area, that is the reality. It's in a conservation area and you have to look after it. And if you don't, then we will basically come after you. And that is what I'm really keen that we follow this up with. And I know I've got Councillor Baldock and some others that would support me on that. So, Jamil, thank you so much for this piece of work. As ever, a good piece of work.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
I'd just like to move recommendations 1 and 2 on page 253 to note the public consultation draft and the responses, and to agree the changes proposed by officers.
Thank you.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. As Jamil took both reports together, was Councillor Baldock going to be moving both recommendations at the same time? Sorry, I just thought I'd ask.
In that case, yeah.
No, we'll take them separately. Sorry, I'll check with our legal officer.
So I think the appropriate thing to do is that you take the recommendations from each separate report separately, but bearing in mind that you've already discussed effectively both reports, you may feel that in respect of the next report, you can simply move straight to the recommendation.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Baldock proposing it, seconded by Councillor Wise. Those in favour? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. And then item 14, proposed by Councillor Baldock. Seconder? Councillor Lehman. Those in favour? And again, that's unanimous, members. Thank you. Right, move on to item 15, which is in your more than capable hands again, Jamil.
Sorry. Milton Regis Conservation Area Review. Milton Regis was originally designated by Kent County Council on 19 July 1977. This is the first review of the conservation area since the conservation area was designated. It is on Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register as well. The current appraisal document has been prepared by Peterbell Heritage Consultancy, and a 6-week consultation period commenced on Friday, 10th of November, 2023, and concluded on 22nd of December, 2023. The officers have received 3 consultation responses, all from local residents. There are several small amendments proposed to Milton Regis Conservation Area. The map is slightly important, so I would direct you to page 446, because all the amendments, they're fairly small amendments, and they go all along the boundary of the conservation area. So there are boundary change A, B1, B2, B3, and C are just to include the entire property. So the curtilage of the property it's just to ensure that the entire property is included. Proposed boundary change D is to extend the conservation area to include the workshop attached to north of 117 High Street and its boundary wall, which is constructed of burr brickwork. Whilst the building, which was originally a forge, has undergone changes over the years, it still retains its original shape and materials and it forms a strong group with 113 to 117 High Street, which are listed buildings. Proposed boundary change E is to remove the access track which runs between the rear of 93 and 95 High Street and Walnut Court from the conservation area. The boundary currently bisects the bungalow at number 2 Walnut Court, so it too should be removed from the conservation area. Proposed boundary change F is to remove land at the rear of 71 to 87 High Street, as well as a group of flat-roofed garages and 3 and 4 Cortland Mews from the conservation area. The area appears to fall outside the original Burgage plots, and the modern buildings are of no architectural interest. Boundary change G is to extend the conservation area marginally to include the retaining wall which fronts Crown Road between number 14 and its junction with Beechwood Avenue. The wall is constructed of local yellow stock brickwork and is a significant feature in the street. Boundary change H is to remove from the conservation area the car park in the backland triangle between Crown Road and St. Paul Street. The area has no intrinsic architectural or historic interest, so does not fit well within the conservation area. Boundary change I is to include all of the grass and public footpath adjacent to the east of number 4 St. Paul's Road within the conservation area. The boundary currently includes only part of the grass area to the rear of 16 to 26 Kingsmill Close, and the proposal is to include all of it. Any questions?
Councillor Bonney, please.
I think when you look at the photographs in the character appraisal here, I mean, some of the buildings are just absolutely fabulous. And I think, we talk about swell in terms of, things around deprivation sometimes and everything else. But we have such rich history here. And I'm really pleased that this piece of work's been brought forward and those boundary changes have been made.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Anybody else, members? I've got Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Boulder.
Just a thought, and there's at least 2 people here who can correct me. Will this tidy up the issue that came up at planning when I was last here on somebody wanted to change their windows, and because they were like, oh, you were fractionally outside the conservation area thing, it would affect you, so it counts as if more or less you're in it. Anyone can help?
Yeah, Councillor Baldock, you're going to speak next anyway.
If you look at the map on 456, if I'm understanding this correctly, the orange bits are coming out and the blue bits are going in. So I'm just wondering, does the new boundary along A still run along that footpath? And the areas that Councillor Harrison was talking about, which did indeed come up in a planning discussion, will be resolved by the removal of plots E and F.
Jamil.
Yes, I suppose so, yes.
Thank you. So, members, could I have a proposer, first of all? Councillor Baldock, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Bonney. Those in favour? Of the official recommendation, of course. Yeah, that's unanimous, members. Thank you. So we finally move on to item 16, which is Faversham, Preston and next conservation area review. When I said fine, I meant your final. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Faversham, Preston next conservation area review. The current appraisal document has been prepared by Urban Vision with input from the Faversham Society. 6 weeks public consultation for the document commenced on 23rd of October 2023 and was due to be concluded on 4th December 2023. However, on request of Historic England, it was extended to conclude on Friday, 15th of December 2023. The officers have received 7 consultation responses on Faversham Preston Next. 6 from local residents, and 1 from Faversham Society. The Faversham Preston Next Conservation Area was originally designated by Kent County Council on 9th of March 1976. It was reviewed by Swale Borough Council in 2004 when it was formally redesignated in. A brief character appraisal accompanied the redesignation in 2004, and this is the first time that a proper management strategy has been included within the appraisal. On the page 514 of the meeting documents, it shows the proposed extension to the conservation area. Now, the map that is included, it shows a purple boundary which was initially meant to remove that part of conservation area. And based on the responses and what we've eventually looked at, I think this should not be removed because that's the only a big green area within the conservation area, and it's a small one. So I think that we are recommending to keep and not remove, and we're looking at extending the conservation area towards the southern part of Canterbury Road to include a few of the terraces, which will form it into it'll make a cohesive conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamil. Members, any questions or observations? Councillor Martin, there's a surprise.
Go on then, it's my patch. It's quite a nice patch as well. I welcome this report, bizarrely, and very pleased to see the south side of Canterbury Road finally coming in. Please ignore the photo a few pages prior to the map, which shows the hideous cars parked in front of those lovely cottages. That will be resolved as a result of the new development at Preston Fields, which is nearby adjacent, which will include parking for those areas, and under the 106 agreement will include double yellow lines in front of those cottages to make it far, far nicer.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
I'll just comment on the responses to the consultation, and all the ones we don't get many responses, but a lot of people think there's no point because nobody listens. But it's good to see in this case that we have had consultation responses, and just proves the point that we do listen and take action when it's needed. So for all those that don't think it's worth you doing consultations, this proves you wrong.
Thank you. Let's send a letter around. Thank you, Jamil. Oh, sorry, I've got, I don't know who's first there. Councillor Baldock first.
Yeah, on that point, I think we should, when we do the publicity for this, the news release, refer to that point. So, you know, in response to consultation responses, changes were made. Apart from that, I was just going to move it.
But you can't yet because I've got Councillor Bonney, you had a hand up.
Yeah, and I suppose this is a bit of a question and an observation. That length along the A2, but I think this goes into Tenham as well, and it sort of slightly drives me crackers driving along it every day, is the hard landscaping of the pavement and the road there, which probably has changed over the years. At some places it's very narrow, but other places it's actually quite wide, and actually having some sort of landscaping there, or some sort of, you know, whether it be a hedge along the A2 in front of some of these properties, would help preserve them and then stop them getting quite so filthy, but would actually set the street scene much better. Is there something that can be encouraged there, do you think, and across the borough? The A2 does have quite a negative, dirty impact in air quality zones, etc. Is there something we can do with streetscapes or encourage along the way, in your opinion?
I think we can certainly look at that because in the rural conservation areas, we always, as part of management strategy, we always look at hedgerows and native planting. And I think it's a very valid point you've raised, and we could potentially look at that in urban scenarios as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Baldock, I think you were proposing recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Martin, thank you. Those in favour? And again, members, that's unanimous. And once again, thank you, Jamil. It was excellent work. Right, we now move on to agenda item 17, which is the forward decisions plan. Any comments or observations? Councillor Baldock.
That's not really, but I think I'd better mention it. When we approved the minutes, I obviously wasn't paying attention. Did we move the minutes of the previous PNRC with the amendment on this paper? Yes. We did. Excellent. Just checking, because I just found...
Sorry, I should have turned that on and said yes. Yeah, thank you. So no comments on the forward decisions plan then? It's just for noting anyway, so can you duly note it, please? Item 18, recommendations from the Swale Joint Transportation Board meeting. Thank you. Approved, yeah. Item 19, which is recommendations from the Planning, Transportation and Policy Working Group, held on the 25th of January 24. Right. Yeah, thank you. So with that one agreed, we're swiftly on to item 20, which is the open space and play strategy, strategic land. Which is in your hands, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. So the open space and play strategy is a key part of the suite of documents that support the local plan with evidence base. The report in front of you tonight is a dual report from myself and Kerry Williams, who's just bringing herself forward for questions should I need any planning support. The existing open space and play strategy is well due a review, but remains current and relevant and successfully used by the planning department and my teams. The reason that it's overdue the review is the fact that we've focused on the playing pitch strategy and the built facilities strategy that are going in front of the community committee later in March. And it was important because the data in those was more expediently needed than in terms of the open space audit. So that's why we're here. However, the open space strategy was written at a time where we were obviously within the cabinet system, and this is the first time really that we've looked at the review to try and tidy up some of those elements in this report, bring in some interim arrangements while we await the full review of the open space strategy. So this report really asks for a number of things, which is first of all for the committee to consider allocating some budget for the full audit and review of the open spaces strategy. To look at the new interim criteria that could be used by officers and members alike during the intervening period, particularly when looking at strategic land. And the reason for that is that the open space strategy, current open space strategy, didn't have a definition for that strategic land. So where it was able to be a conversation between cabinet members and officers previously, in the new committee system that doesn't work. So looking to set some interim criteria in that intervened period. There is then an exempt appendix as part of the report, and it's exempt because it includes a specific piece of land. Chair, I'm perfectly happy to take your judgment on whether we consider the recommendations in the open report first and then go into the exempt appendix, or whether you'd like to do all of it afterwards. So happy to take any consideration from members on that.
Councillor Harrison.
Can we just make sure that everyone's got that blue paper?
Yeah, it was circulated to all, so I don't.
We have some spare hard copies.
To be fair, it was emailed round, and you had to put a code in, and then when it came up, 568 pages, all I could get was page 1. So I thought,
Did Billy say he's got some?
Yeah, I've got some spare ones.
So happy to take those considerations, but obviously two key parts in the open report, two recommendations in terms of the open report, and then the third one is in relation to the accept appendix, where it will be really helpful to give officers a guide for the next steps on that.
Thank you. So members, do you want 10-minute adjournment to go through the blue paper?
no, I did speed reading course, which is well Council put on.
Well done. I must have missed that one.
50 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Members, what we'll do is I will give you 5 minutes to read it. If there's those that will struggle with that, then we'll say 10. Is there anybody that will struggle with more than 5?
Disabilities, etc.
Okay, so 5 minutes adjournment. Yeah. Members, it looks like, Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, I'd just like to propose an amendment to paragraph 2.11 on page 527, if you are using your paper copies. It should all be 2.11, shouldn't it? It should all be 527. Yep. Excellent. It currently reads, it is considered to be the last countryside gap between the edge of a town and settlement and the start of a rural village boundary. I can see we could end up having loads of arguments about, oh well, if you allow this bit, there's still the last bit of gap, and I think that's just going to just cause problems. So I would propose that it reads, it is considered to be part of an important countryside gap.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, seconded. Members, anybody want to speak to that? Yeah.
I guess my only caution on that is, and I can absolutely see why. So my only caution on that is what this is trying to do is make quite a clear definition, and different people's view of whether it is important or not. So calling it important is the same as calling it strategic, which we're trying to define at the moment, I think. So we might come up against those same issues of who determines whether it's important or not. And so I guess I agree in terms of last being difficult, but how do we define it slightly tighter so that it's not left to reflection?
I would suggest then we go, it is considered to be part of a countryside gap.
Yeah. Great.
Then you don't have to worry if it's important or not. They're all important, so.
So, did you want to formally amend that proposal, just so we get it for the record?
Yeah. But 2.11 be amended to, it is considered to be part of a countryside gap between the edge of a town settlement and the start of a rural village boundary.
Okay, and you're happy to second that, Councillor Bonney? Yeah. Councillor Harrison, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things to consider here. Of course, there's the can you give us however much for an audit or whatever we called it. There is the issue of Swale moving slightly its current policy about taking on bits of land from developers. And then there's this strategic thing. I happen to support the current policy of no commuted. We're not taking on any more commuted sums and bits of land because, okay, it wasn't us, it was previous Conservative administration, but they had all the facts and figures there of how much land they had, under the policy, taken over the years, and how much it was costing, and blah 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 blah. And that is why the policy was agreed that we would not, in future, you want to put a play area in, which you've got to do under the rules. You pay for it ad infinitum. You want to put this in, you pay for it ad infinitum. So I'd be very concerned that we are going to come up with a criteria that says, and therefore Swale will have this bit, will agree to take over this bit in future, and that bit, and that bit, and that bit. I know, I'll be honest, it's a bit of a blur, which is which. The map is in the blue, I know, but, you know, that's a big bit of land. So I say I have some concerns that we are amending the policy without the financial implications of it. How's that? Thanks.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Baldock and then Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, just to clarify, as the officer said in the introduction, the current policy includes the word strategic, and the current policy, however much one might like it, doesn't define the word strategic. What we are trying to do is enact the current policy and give a meaning to the word strategic under the new committee system. If the old policy remains, it remains with an undefined word that, with a process that we can't enact. So that's why we're seeking to change it and clarify it.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Just on the not adopting the land, I've come across this a few times with new developments, and management companies come in, you put in a play area, management company do it, but it does actually cause a lot of conflict in those areas. It's not the best way to do things. Having the council have those areas is much easier. What I've had is residents say, well, we pay our management company, we pay our fees, why should we have other people coming into our area and using our parks? And they've right in some ways, and especially when other people come in and start smashing things up. So it does make it easier, but I do also know the reasons behind it, and simply we can't afford to keep having all this land and taking it on. So it's a difficult one, but just to say, I don't think we've really got much choice of not adopting all this land, but it does cause its conflict and there are going to be problems in the future. The other thing I just wanted to pick up is the funding for this. I agree that it needs some changes, but 2017 was quite a while ago. If we're looking at it as evidence-based, especially with the local plan, we do need something, but to have £35,000 when we're trying to save money and a year's worth of work to go into this, surely doing an audit, we should already know what our land is, where the problems are, what the quality of it is. It's work that should be being done all the time. Why is it that we have to go out and spend that money and get people in to tell us what we should already know? Is it not possible to save some money and just do this in-house and just refresh it? That's enough that's needed to get to the standard that we want it at.
Okay. Martin, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I think Councillor Hunt ended up answering his own question, and Lisa would kill me if I didn't say it. But, you know, part of that is exactly what you said, which is infinitely taking on each piece of land in new developments means that you'll need to be increasing grounds maintenance budgets and resources to be able to inspect them and extra. So at the moment, the council budget doesn't allow that, but I absolutely understand the concept behind the comments. In terms of the funding for the audit, you're absolutely right. I would love to be going round and my guys being able to do all of the inspections on whether it's, you know, poor, medium, or poor standard or high quality. We just, again, simply do not have that in-house resource to be able to do that. I think you're right in terms of open space doesn't fundamentally change over time. But there will be new pieces of land that have come on board during that period, and so that resource is for somebody to physically visit each of those sites to see whether they've decreased in quality, increased in quality throughout that period. So it is just simply a matter of resource in the current structures.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
And I understand that with, obviously, yeah, if we go and ask officers to go out, it takes them away from doing things. But the question is, why are we not doing that as we go along? It should be a case of, and we've got 35,000 now, in a few years' time as well, we'll all have to go, we need to go back out and have a look at them again. We should be, as we go along, just making sure that there's a record of these things so we don't have to keep coming up every few years and spending more money and more consultants coming in. So maybe it's just something to take away and see if there is anything that can be changed, that coming forward in the future we can get a running audit keeping going, as it were.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I'd agree. Going forward, that would be a good way of working. I mean, I'm really talking to recommendation 2. There are different ways that you have open space. A nature reserve, for example, Borden Nature Reserve, is the maintenance has been undergone by the parish council for the last 25 years. We're looking at extending the lease on that. and it hasn't cost us more than 20. You know, I would say over the 25-year period, we haven't spent more than £20,000. Now, if that had been a country park, or if it had been a manicured lawn or something, it would cost a lot more. I think it depends on what sort of open space you know, what use the land is put to. So that's, I think, something that we need to look at when we look at individual examples. So I think that this new arrangement for determining strategic land will enable us to actually bring a policy into effective use, because at the moment we haven't got a policy, we can't define strategic, and this will enable us to do so. And I think we all know that there is concern about settlement convergence, and this is one way of tackling that. Councillor Hunt's right, there are so many problems with management companies and, you know, residents feeling that this is their land, they're paying for it. It's a lot easier if you don't have to deal with that sort of stuff going forward. I really think this is a good approach for giving us a necessary definition of strategic that we can use going forward, and planning officers can use in planning applications, and you know, it will make that whole approach to making new development suitable for the communities that are going to be there and the existing communities an awful lot easier.
Thank you. And I haven't forgotten, we've got your amendment proposal seconded, still out on the floor. Councillor Bonney.
Well, that was what I was going to check, because obviously I've got something else to bring up. Did you want me to bring that up, or are we going to deal first with the amendment?
I'd like to deal with the amendment first, please.
That's fine. Happy to go to the vote on that.
Okay, thank you. Members, those in favour of the amendment? Unanimous, thank you. So that amendment is adopted. And just before we go on to the rest of this paper, I just want a confirmation from everybody that you've had sufficient time to have read that, to make it a really informed decision about where we... Right, thank you. And when I said read that, I meant the blue paper. Thank you. Councillor Bonney, then, did you want to...
We're good at mind reading, it's all right, and sign language. So bearing in mind the discussion we had earlier about the local plan and paragraph 2.1, where we say this take 12 months, and effectively what we've got is an interim position, I think I'd like the officers, obviously Kerry's here, she's aware of where we are in the local plan discussion, and around the issues of Reg 1819. I want to make sure that this piece of work comes forward in the right time frame to dovetail into our local plan work, and that it doesn't come along afterwards and it's too late, effectively. So can I have some assurance on that 12 months actually might be more like 6 months, and that it says there this is a long piece of work, which worries me. And I reflect on the Councillor Hunt's comments about, you know, could this be done more expediently, possibly internally, and will require 12 months plus the support of external consultants. So is that on top of the 12-month time frame, or is that we will need the external consultants within the 12-month time frame? So I just want clarity on the time frame, because this is critical and our local plan is critical, and we've got to make sure this all hangs together.
Thank you. Martin?
Let's take that first. So the 12-month timescale is the estimated to bring forward to committee the revised strategy. So the audit, assuming approved tonight, budget put forward, we would have to go out and commission that piece of work for the consultants, and then they would go out and do the field work, come back with a report, and that's what then members would be able to debate. So back in early 23, the Environment Committee looked through the existing policy and raised a number of comments, including those that Councillor Hunt raised there. So it would be the information coming back on the factual audit, plus then what members, how members want to analyse that and the changes you would want to make. So from the discussion tonight, if you were looking for us to be taking on all land, then that would need to go through that discussion process around the implications, positive and negative, of all of that. So that's why we were allowing that period. My discussions with, I haven't had discussions with the current planning policy team, but my discussions with the previous planning policy manager were that in terms of the local plan, provided it was in train, then that was suitable, but I'm happy to take further advice on that.
Can I come back?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be too slow, if I'm honest. And I think if we're going out to external consultants, they should be able to do this quite rapidly and turn this around quite rapidly. It probably takes longer for us to employ the consultant than it does for them to do the piece of work. But, you know, if we're looking at a Reg 18 and then a Reg 19, that needs to be brought on pretty quickly. The old planning policy manager was way behind the curve, you know, with the announcement that happened in December. This is full steam ahead. This is no dithering and no excuse not to deliver. So I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, and I think we can go away and ask those questions of the industry as to I'm guessing the more people you put on it, if it's one person going and looking at the 900 plus open spaces that they need to look at in our borough, then that takes quite a lot of time. But if it's 10 people doing it, then clearly that expedites things. So it's the reality is we'll be able to do it quicker or slower with the amount of people going and doing that.
Okay, Kerry, did you want to comment?
In terms of the open space strategy, it usually form part of the evidence base for the local plans to be used to inform the policies. But I think, as Matt said, as long as we have it in draft and chain, it can still be used to inform those policies.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
I'll try and make it easier this time round. If we're going to go ahead with such an audit, could the results of said audit be utilised as well to look at where we can reduce our liability by perhaps looking at asset transfers or sales where it no longer makes sense? I'm thinking along the lines of some of those green spaces that were, and I hate the word ransom strip when it comes to councils, but ransom strips when we did the stock transfer back in 1990. Let's face it, who needs an area that used to have swings on it that doesn't anymore?
Yeah, really sensible suggestion, Councillor Martin. I think there are pieces of land that weren't covered in the stock transfers that we really have no functional or amenity value. The issue is who are we going to give them to is often the question, but yeah, that's definitely part of our everyday process of trying to look at pieces of land, and that's covered under obviously the community asset disposal or the property asset strategy in terms of the disposal of that said pieces of land.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
So we, SBC, need a refresh of a number of strategies. This is one of them, and indeed policies to go in the local plan. So I'm thinking, I've been here many moons ago. Why isn't it taken out of the local plan reserve? Because that's what we put it in the budget for. The local plan reserve, which has currently got £212,000 in it. This is necessary for the local plan. It ain't rocket science, is it?
No, but it's fiscal security and stability. Councillor Worcester.
Thanks, Chair. just going through this process for the first time, I just wanted to ask a question based around the scrutiny, if that's okay. So this process is taking place under what you deem as an audit, yes? I'm assuming that's the same when the local plan comes up for review, that, like Councillor Harrison said, that there are several strategies that would go through an audit process to, but not an audit. Okay, so my question really, and I'm happy to be corrected, is an audit something that is definitely necessary? Could this same process be achieved with a peer review? Could it be something where a relationship with another body, for instance, could be traded in terms of if we're in relationships with, I don't know, the councils that take place in Mid-Kent? Could that not be taking place? Would, like, for instance, have we just considered that we may get the same information and the same robust test of our risks and our liability through, is this the best process to carry that through? I've just noticed that recently we've had a different discussion about an audit where, for instance, a company has taken place in the audit and ramped up the price to £100,000, and there is no kind of barrier on that for councils. That appears to be an open ceiling for that price to go up. I just want to make sure, my question is this the best vehicle that you see to achieve your desired outcome to prove this for the local plan work, if that makes sense?
Yeah, a really good question, Councillor Worcester. So to describe the audit slightly better for you, it follows planning policy guidance structure. So there's a guidance that we have to follow, and each of the inspectors go and look at the criteria, and that gives them the ability to judge it as high, medium, or low quality. And it splits all of the open spaces into different types. So as Councillor Baldock talked about, some will be biodiversity, woodland, amenity, which is your recreation grounds. Others will be various different types. And so what that allows us to do through that data is say, we've got this amount of that type, this amount of that type, this amount of that type. 50% of it is high quality, 40% of it is medium quality, 10% is low quality. And then what that enables the planners to do is to be able to use that. So when they're engaging with the developers to say, actually, we're in need of more amenity space in the area, or more biodiversity space, or others. And that's what allows us to secure both the amount of space in developments and or developer contributions if it's coming to us. So it follows quite a formulaic process, which is why the audit, and I say it's an audit, it's basically a qualified inspector that goes and looks at each of the pieces of land, grades them, and then tells us that. So it's and that's kind of the reason of why we can't do that, in our ongoing work as well, because it follows that sort of strict criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa.
Yeah, it's very different from the external auditors that are doing our financial and value for money audits, where we are restricted to a very limited suppliers and the procurement process that increased our audit fee. So it's very different process. So although the term audit is used, it is not the same thing. So that doesn't apply in this case.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Chair. I'm struggling to see why these two recommendations are being linked. Now that we find out it's to look at 900 pieces of land. That's nothing to do with a new strategy. That's looking at 900 pieces of land. I kind of feel that, as Councillor Hunt said, this should be, we should be looking at this on an ongoing basis. I presume something was done for this in preparation for the aborted 2019 Reg 19, so there can't be a huge amount of changes. I'm just wondering, what on earth do we need to do this for in the local plan? We should already have a fairly recent audit or account or whatever if we don't, we obviously don't need one for Reg 19. Yeah, I'm just that figure of 900 just blew me a bit because that's a lot of bits of land, and some of them are going to be absolutely irrelevant. I imagine this is the bits of land that put at the end of people's gardens that they've morphed into their gardens because we can't even access them. And then why does this need to be done for the local plan? What we should be doing is focusing on the critical areas that will be part of the local plan or will affect the local plan. I don't think anybody needs to know that the land, the 3 metres, a 3-foot strip at the back of somebody's house, a row of houses, the old odd bits of land. That's not really going to play a great distinctive role in our local plan. So why does that need to be done for the local plan? Why are we not focusing on the important bits, and these other bits could be done over the next couple of years? Because frankly, unless we're in a position to either award them or just give them to people, or as Councillor Martin said, do some asset transfers, this seems to be a lot more than is necessary.
Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, I'm struggling to know how to answer that. So from our point of view, as part of the evidence base of the local plan, one of the requirements is to know the makeup of your open space in your borough, and that's what this inspection goes out and does. And then from that data, we then come up with the open space strategy, and within that, it will have recommendations for how what type of land we want to come forward in the future, how we want that to be maintained, and more to the point, it sets standards that enable the planners to say to the developers, your development is X amount of houses, and for that you need X square metres of open space. So it is really quite critical that this piece of work is done in order to back that up. In answer to the question around was it done ready for the 2019, no, because we still had the valid open space strategy period in that time. It's only now that it has to be updated that evidence base, I think, is every 5 years, if not 7. She's nodding at 5. So I also would happily not pay an external company to do that. But the amount of work involved is just not within the current structure of the council to be able to do that.
If I could come back, we haven't got 12 months then. That's got to be done in 6.
Okay, Kerry.
Yeah, thank you. Just to expand on what Martin was saying. So in terms of the open space strategy itself, it's a really important document in starting to understand your baseline in open space, and from there you will develop your strategy, which will go on to inform the policies contained within the local plan. So from there we can identify sort of opportunities and constraints in certain areas, and as development proposals come forward, in terms of allocations, if there are shortfalls in open space, it might be that we can get some specific wording into policies to ensure that we're getting the open spaces that we need in certain areas. And equally, it helps us understand the quantums of affordable housing, the quantums of open space that are needed as ad hoc developments come forward, and where there are shortfalls, so we can ensure that we're getting the correct contributions and monies are being directed to the right places.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. A lot of what I was going to say, Councillor Baldock has said, and I think the questions I had been answered, and I think that is the thing. It's because it has been delayed, the reason why we are having to do this now, because it's run out of time, basically the 5 years. That was going to be my question, is how long do we go? And it is 5 years for that evidence to basically run out. But I agree, I don't see that we've got time to do it, because you said about running alongside the local plan as long as it's being done, but surely to have evidence there when it goes forward to the final Reg 19, the evidence has to be there, has to be finished. You can't be running alongside and, still working on the evidence. It surely has to be done. So I do just wonder whether it's a case of having to take the 2017 one and refreshing it rather than going out for a whole 900 things and working out what we need to have, because you should already know that base of it in there, and just doing a bit of work which would also cost less and get it done quicker.
Martin, do you want to comment?
I think we can definitely look at the specification, because there could be a risk basis, and I'm doing this with no oversight of planning guidance on this. So this is purely me as Open Spaces is saying, if something was deemed to be high standard in the previous audit, do we need to prioritise visiting those sites moving forward? And I genuinely don't know the answer, so I'd have to take that away and ask. But we could certainly go to the industry and say, number one, if we gave you a deadline of 6 months, how would you do it, and what would the price be, and see how far we get. I don't think the audit is the problem. I think it's then the consideration from members of the data to help you form the policies that you want to go into both the local plan and obviously the Open Spaces document. So I'm definitely hearing the need for urgency on this, and therefore I think all I can say, Leader, is we can go away and ask those questions, but having a decision of a way forward tonight would help us expedite that process.
Yeah, Councillor Baldock.
In view of that, I'm happy to move recommendation number 1 because we need to get that agreed, just so that we can go and see what is possible.
Could I have a seconder for that, Councillor Bonney?
I'll speak now, if I may. Yeah, so I agree with that. That the Planning and Transportation Working Group have agreed to quite short notice meetings in order to enable certain things to happen. So I think that process should be fairly easy in talking to members and fairly swift. All we asked is, I think today, this afternoon, is don't deliver it to us on a Friday afternoon and expect us on a Monday evening on a big thick document to have done that. But, you know, we can be quite reactive to that evidence base. What I would like to put in here a timeline to hold the feet to the fire.
So we can't put a timeline in now because we don't know specification, we don't know the market, we don't know whether there is anyone out there that can do it in a particular timeline. What we can commit to is that we will go away, we will work with members, we will look at the art of the possible and we'll report back. But it would be foolhardy for us to say, yes, we can do it by July and go out and actually there isn't one organisation that can deliver it by then. We also have to be aware, I accept that members want it to be done quickly. We also, there is a premium price for having 10 people rather than 5 people, and I'm not saying that we'll have 10 or 5, but the more people that work on it, the quicker we have it done, that's more expensive. And we just, as officers, we can only work within the budget envelope given to us by you. So we have to make sure that what we're looking at doing fits within that budget envelope. And if it doesn't, come back for guidance and agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. It's on that proposal. I think if we're taking forward, the problem I've got with this is there seems to be a little bit more work that needs to be done to understand what is needed and how much it's going to cost, when it can be done by, what is needed for the local plan. So by taking that recommendation 1 forward now, we will actually be agreeing to have a full commission in the open space audit, and £35 would be good. 35,000 to be allocated in the budget. I don't think we can agree that. because we don't know that information at the moment. So I'd say it would almost need, I would say, an amendment to that recommendation to say that we agree for officers to go away and investigate of what is needed to do the full open spaces audit and looking at putting it into the budget. It's just something's needed because, but at the moment, I can't agree with what's in there because we're agreeing for them to officers to go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Lisa, did you want
I'm not quite sure what you're not comfortable with, but if we can allocate a sum that we can work within, then it will save us having to come back for another financial limit. And if that is not sufficient, then we'll come back. If it's more than enough, then we'll just put the money back.
Just to clarify, the recommendation says, so forget the money in there, we agree for officers to commission the full open spaces audit. But we don't know if that's needed.
Yeah, I think there was a full open spaces audit with reference to, I think, the 2017, isn't that so? Was mistaken during the discussions.
We would always hand over the previous audit to the new consultant anyway to use as a basis. So they would be working from that data.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Just to try and get us a bit further along, in terms of this, let's say that we can't find someone that can do it in 6 months for an amount that we can afford. Can we utilise what information we do have in the local plan and then utilise a supplementary planning policy on that local plan when we get the full data of the report? Is that plausible?
On the spot there, Kerry.
Sorry, I feel like I'm put on the spot. Potentially, I'd probably have to go away and have a look into it and come back to you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I think by agreeing this recommendation, what we're doing is saying, go away, see if you can do it, look how you can do it, bearing in mind what has been said about refreshing the existing audit, looking at ways of doing it as expediently as possible. I won't say as cheaply as possible, but as financially...
I would.
As financially prudently as possible. And bearing in mind £35,000 is a limit. If it has to go higher, then it would have to be agreed by someone. If it can be done for less, then it's money left over.
Larissa, please.
Might it be of assistance if an amendment was proposed that gave delegation to someone to undertake the work necessary to get the evidence required for the local plan within a budget envelope which enables us to go and do the thing you're asking us to do, although we don't quite yet know what that exactly is, but by giving officers the delegation to do the work that's necessary, that stops us having to come back. What we've heard from members tonight is, we want you to do what you have to do for the local plan, but we don't want it gold-plated. We want what you need to do. And if that was an amendment, that wouldn't be as brutal as saying we're going to do all 900. If for the local plan we have to do all 900, then we have the ability. But by delegating to Martin, you? Is it you? I don't know if it's you or planning. Okay, so delegating to Emma, the Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods, if you have that as an amendment, so delegate to the Director of Neighbourhoods and Regeneration, other way around, to undertake the work necessary, the necessary audit work to satisfy the policy requirements of the local plan within a budget envelope of up to £35,000. What you're then doing is giving officers the ability to go and do what you actually want us to do. If that, Councillor Hunt, meets what you were suggesting.
That's exactly what I was getting at, and I'm happy to. That's exactly what I was going to propose next. So I'll propose it.
Right. Have we captured? Have we captured?
I will second that.
Thanks, Councillor Hunt. Seconded by.
I would add in consultation with the leader and deputy leader, so that we can chivvy it.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever.
I'm voting, Chair. I'm voting.
All right. Okay. Those in favour? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So that's the amendment.
Yeah, that's for the amendment. Yeah. Okay. So now we've got the other two substantial bits. Obviously, one of those is the blue paper bit. So if you think we're going to have to stray there, then we'll take it outside.
What's number one?
We've just amended number one.
So then it will be the.
We've agreed number one as amended.
Yeah.
We made a previous amendment earlier.
You need to agree to be able to agree for it.
We agreed the other amendment.
Which was the wording
Part of.
Yeah.
part. Exactly.
Propose numbers 1 and 2 as they're now amended. And then we can move on.
Yes.
I propose 1 and 2 as amended.
Do you have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Yes, and the final one is obviously the land detail in the exempt appendix.
So, sorry.
Well, 1 second.
So members have the opportunity now, if you wish to discuss this paper, we will go into private part 2. If you feel that you can agree the recommendations without asking any questions that identifies what you're looking at, if you need to have any questions, then we'll go into part 2. It's quite okay to go into part 2, but we don't need to go into part 2 if you're just saying you're happy to agree it. That doesn't need to be in part 2. So it's entirely up to members.
I'm happy with taking a vote on that now.
Okay, so could I have a proposal for that? Please? Monique, thank you, Monique. Could I have a seconder? Mike, thank you. And those in favour? Or was it? I didn't. Did you want to say something?
Can I just ask for a quick clarification? So the recommendation is members are asked to confirm whether they feel it would meet the criteria or not. So I think I just need the answer yes or no.
Yes.
And then we vote
Vote
on
in
it.
favour
Yeah.
and then say, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so I got Monique and I got Mike as a seconder. Those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you, members. So, there'll be nothing further to offer for this particular meeting. Thank you all very much. It's been a bit of a tour de force. Not much. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. And officers online that didn't really get a speaking part.